Hello kids, welcome to your science revision class. This is me, Aves. I will be discussing human respiratory system, which is unit 1 for your grade 7 science. So let's get into it. Our first unit is divided into 5 topics, which is the human respiratory system, the air sacs, which are further involved in the respiration, and then we will try to understand the process of breathing, and then later on we are going to differentiate the process of breathing from respiration. Now, over here, I would like to highlight this that respiration and breathing are two different operations in the body. So we're going to differentiate that. Along with it, we're going to end this unit with our topic, which is blood. We'll understand how the blood is involved in the process of respiration, right? So let's get into topic 1.1, which is human respiratory system. So as you can see in the diagram, human respiratory system, consists of several parts, which most importantly are part over here. Let me just grab my pen. Okay. So when we talk about the human respiratory system, we understand that the human respiratory system means that the organs that involve in the gaseous exchange, right? So we can simply say system of organs that help us in breathing, right? Now I'm writing breathing over here. Now this is a very critical part, as I told you that we will be differentiating about breathing and respiration. So first we need to understand what breathing is. This is actually the gas exchange, right, between air to lungs and back, right? So this is what breathing is all about, right? So breathing is, I'm going to write this over here. Breathing means air to lungs and back again, right? So this is the gas exchange between the lungs and the air or the atmosphere around us, right? So what are the parts? We understand that when we breathe, we take in air through our nose and through our mouth, right over here. So these are the two entry points. Over here, this is the nasal cavity, right? So this is the nasal cavity. Uh, and through the nasal cavity the air goes into our throat. Over here we have trachea, right? And then before the trachea we have larynx over here, right? Just write it up properly, right? Larynx. So this is the part, right? And through the larynx the air goes into the trachea, which is the windpipe, and then from the windpipe it goes into the two bronchi, right, which leads into the two lungs, and from the bronchi into the bronchioles, which are these smaller pipelines leading up to the alveoli, right? So these are the bronchioles, right, the smaller pipelines that are here, right, these ones, as you can see, it's already highlighted over here. And then these are the tiny little air sacs, which are called alveoli, and these help transfer oxygen and carbon dioxide between air and our blood, right? So over here I'm going to just summarize the point, right? So we have the nasal cavity, right? uh, then we have mouth. I'll write, you can say, the component and its function, right? And this is the order, right? Order means that how it goes in to the air, how air is taken in all the way down to the lungs, right? So this is one, this is step two. Both of them are actually parallel, right? So step three, it goes into the larynx, right? And from the larynx it goes into trachea, and from trachea it goes into uh, your bronchi, right? Bronchus is singular, bronchi is plural. Then we have bronchioles, right? And then from bronchioles into the alveoli, right? And then lastly from alveoli into the blood, and so we're not going to discuss this over here for now. Now let's just devise the functions over here, right? So nasal cavity allows, right, the air to move into throat, right? Or what we say our mouth, right? It also allows, the mouth also allows the air to move into the throat, right? And larynx is also known as the voice box, right? Uh, Helps in making sound. Okay. Then we have trachea, which is the windpipe, right? Takes air into the lungs, right? And then we have the bronchi, which are takes air from trachea into each lung, right? And then bronchioles, smaller pipelines leading to alveoli, right? And then the alveoli helps exchange gases from blood, right? And the passageway is back way, all the way back up, right? So over here, these are the main critical functions of each of these parts. I will now highlight each of these parts over here with a blue pen. So air goes in, right? So over here we understand that respiration is the gaseous exchange between the air and the lungs over here, right? Which are these parts. Now remember, both these lungs are of not the same size, right? So I'm going to highlight that factor over here, right? So the most important factor over here is that both lungs are not the same size, right? And left lung is actually smaller. And why is that smaller? Smaller to allow space for heart, right? So sorry, I read earth, I need to write heart, right? Heart. So over here, as you can see, that this on the contrary is the left lung. As you can see, this has a little cavity. Over here comes the heart, right? Heart comes here. So the left lung is always a little smaller. The right lung is actually bigger in size. So we can say that obviously being bigger means more air exchange is possible in the left, in the right lung, right? So this is the basic of the respiratory system. This is the anatomy of the respiratory system. Now we're going to get deeper into the function, that how the air exchange is actually taking place. Now we do know, I'm going to make a flow chart over here, right? So let's call this as breathe in and breathe out, right? So when we're breathing in, what is happening, and when we're breathing out, what is happening? So when we breathe in, right? Breathe in. So it goes from nasal cavity or mouth, right, into our towards the larynx. And from larynx it goes into trachea. From trachea it goes into bronchi, right, the two bronchi that we have, and from bronchi it goes into bronchioles, and from bronchioles to air sacs, right, or the alveoli, and from there it goes into blood, right? Now this is the process of breathe in, right? Now I will also highlight the chain of actions or the chain of events for breathe out, right? So when we are breathing out, right? So when we breathe out, I think I missed the E for breathe, right? Okay. So when we breathe out, the carbon dioxide comes from blood into uh, the air sacs, right? It's the same order but in reverse. So it would be air sacs, right? From there to the bronchioles, and from bronchioles to bronchi, from bronchi into trachea, from trachea into uh, larynx, and from larynx into, back out from through the nasal cavity, right? Nose or the mouth, right? So that's how the breathe in and breathe out works. Now, what are the gases involved, right? So when we talk about breathe in, oxygen, right? We call it O2, is inhaled, right? And for breathe out, again, right? So this is carbon dioxide. I'm going to put it in the brackets. So this is CO2 is exhaled, right? So this is the basic idea of how the respiratory system works and how the gaseous exchange is taking place. Now we're going to rush into these air sacs. Now let's have a closer look of the deeper function of the lungs, right? Over here we understand that when we're talking about alveoli, these are the tiny little air sacs, as you can see in the previous image, that the air comes in, goes all the way to these tiny little air sacs over here, right? So this is one tiny little air sac. As you can see, this tiny little air sac is drawn. These have these small windpipes over here. Let me just use a different color, which will be more visible. Right? Let's take the green one. Right? As you can see, this. Oh, that's a bit too big. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So let's use. As you can see, this green one that I highlighted, these tiny little pores, these are the tubes which lead up to bronchioles, right? And once air comes into these alveoli, these have such tiny membranes that the CO2, right, CO2 and O2 is exchanged, right, through these membranes. So carbon dioxide comes in, oxygen goes out, right, into the air sacs, right, and oxygen goes into the blood. So what really is happening is that let's just say I'm going to draw one of this alveoli, right, and this is just a block diagram, right? This is not how it actually looks like in real life. So we're just going to make this capillary, right? Now imagine that this tiny little thing that I made, this is the blood vessel, right, through which the blood is going to move, capillaries. In these capillaries we have blood coming in with these RBCs as well, right, the red blood cells, and we do know that red blood cells carry oxygen. So for us, the oxygen, right, let's make it green, using a blue pen. So the oxygen gets in, right, the O2 gets in, and the CO2 actually goes out, right? So remember that the CO2 is coming in from the plasma, and the O2 is actually getting in to these red blood cells, right? So over here I'm going to mark these as RBCs, right, or the red blood cell. Uh-oh. So if the blood is moving from this way, right? Let me just highlight the plasma as well, right? I'm just going to highlight this, that this transparent part, right, which I'm now coloring it as yellow, this is actually the plasma, right? The plasma is the liquid, the transparent liquid in the blood that carries all the white blood cells, red blood cells around the body, and it's actually delivering all the glucose and the energy as well as the carbon dioxide around the body, right? So the carbon dioxide comes out of the plasma into the air sacs, while the oxygen gets from the air sacs into the RBCs, and these red blood cells now go towards the organs, right? So we will say towards heart, and the heart is later on going to pump this. This is coming from heart, right? You can say that the blood, the deoxygenated blood, right? We call it deoxygenated blood, and this will be called as oxygenated blood, right? The blood that does contain oxygen. Oxygenated blood, right? So this is the whole idea which is actually going inside the alveoli, right? The air exchange that actually does take place is at the end of the alveoli. Now over here I'm going to reinforce this idea that this is, so far we are discussing breathing, right? This has nothing to do with respiration, right? So far we're only and only discussing breathing, right? And in breathing we are only talking about air exchange, right? Again and again I'm going to reinforce this idea that this is just all about air exchange between the air and the blood or the alveoli or the lungs, right? Not this cannot be referred to as purely respiration, because respiration is entirely a different process, right? So let's get into breathing. So how the breathing mechanism works, how we are able to breathe the air in and breathe the air out. Over here we can see that when we talk about breathe in, we have this let me draw this rough diagram, that this is our like two lungs, right? uh, One a little smaller, as I told you that the left lung is a bit smaller. Now these are covered by muscle, right? It's actually protected by the rib cage, right? And there is a diaphragm muscle at the bottom of the lungs which helps us breathe in and breathe out. So when this muscle pushes up, we actually contract the lungs, right? I'm going to redraw those. So your lungs are now a bit compressed, right? Now this is just an exaggeration. This is not how much your lungs are actually going to get pinched in, but just to give you an idea how breathing and breathe out works, right? These muscles actually, when they relax, it pushes in. This is when we breathe out, right? And contrary to this, when we're trying to breathe in, our lungs, the diaphragm muscle, from this elevated position, I'm going to draw it again, right? It actually tries to relax us out, and our lungs are able to now expand. Sorry, I need to make more space, otherwise two diagrams will get mixed up, right? Okay. And when we're breathing out, we see our diaphragm muscle, which is this muscle I will explain in a moment, right? Let me just figure out the drawings. Working with this digital pencil is quite the hard work. Alright, so over here, when our lungs were pinched out, right, we exhaled the air out, and these are the intercostal muscles, right, the muscles that are between the ribs, right? Okay, when this relaxes, right, when it comes out, so our lungs are now able to have more volume, and hence we're able to breathe the air in, right? Now do mind this this space that I'm keeping, right? This is for heart, right? This position is for heart, right? Okay, so these are the intercostal muscles. So I'm just going to tabulate what really happens. Okay, so over here This is the lung, right? This is the lung. These are the intercostal muscles, right? The muscles between our ribs, and this is the diaphragm, right? The diaphragm muscle. So when we talk about breathe in, so we have the lungs, we have intercostal muscles, and then we have the diaphragm, right? And these are the three things that get involved in breathing and breathe out, right? So I'm just going to you know label these in a manner so that it's able for you. It's much more easy for you to understand, right? So when we breathe in, the lungs get pushed, right? Uh, or compressed. Compressed means it is being pressed, right? The volume is reduced. Over here, let me just write this. This is breathe out, and then over here, I'm just going to erase this. Right, this is breathe in, right? So when we breathe out, the lungs are getting compressed. They're squeezed in, right? I'll use the word squeezed if the compressed word is a bit difficult. So squeezed, right? So they're squeezed, and then when we breathe out, when we're trying to breathe out, the lungs are squeezed, and when we're breathing in, they are relaxed, right? Or unsqueezed, or the volume increases, right? When we talk about the intercostal muscles, when we're breathing out, right, they are actually relaxed, right? And the diaphragm is also relaxed. Relaxed means that the muscles are longer than they're usually looked at, right? And when we talk about breathe in, then the intercostal muscles are contracted, and the diaphragm is also contracted. Now remember, contraction does not mean the movement of muscle alone. Contraction means, as you can see, that the diaphragm, if in this position, this is elongated, right? Elongated. It appears to be longer than this, right? If you take the total length of this whole muscle from here to here, this appears to be longer than this one, right? Why? This is contraction, right? This is going to be contracted. So similar way, when we talk about the intercostal muscles, let's say these are the ribs, right? These ribs are connected by muscles, right? So these also relax and contract, right? The gap between these two rib bones increase or decrease. As you can see, when you breathe in, your chest moves, it opens up a little bit, and when you try to breathe out, then these muscles are contracted, and you're trying to get the air out of your muscles, right? Out of your lungs. So this is how it works. Now moving into our fourth topic, which is respiration, right? Now over here, before I move into respiration, you need to understand that what is the total of volume, right? A few things, additional information that I'd like to share is that when a person breathes, we usually breathe or exhale or inhale, right? Humans, where are humans? X, right? All right. Humans can breathe half a pint of air while gaseous exchange occurs, right? So by volume, we're able to take half a pint of air in and out of our lungs when we're breathing, or one complete breathing cycle, right? So one complete breathing cycle is one complete cycle of one complete breath, and this would not contain the E, is about one inhalation and exhalation cycle, right? So one time we inhale the air, and once we exhale it, that's what we call a one complete breath, right? So this is a little bit about breathing. Again, breathing only means exchange of gas. I'm going to write this again to reinforce. It's exchange. It's exchange of air between environment, right, and the lungs, right? This is the and sign. So let me just write if someone is and lungs, right? So this is breathing, right? And we do know the sequence of the tissues and the organs which are involved, from the nose, the larynx, the trachea, and the bronchi, and all the way down and back up, right? Okay. Now, moving into the fourth part, human gas exchange, right? And over here, the diagram is very much self-explanatory. I'm just going to start with the diagram. I'm going to take this light blue pen. So when we're breathing in and out, right, we do understand that the air is going in, the inspiration air or the inhaled air, it goes all the way to the trachea, and from the blood, it goes into, we do know that air exchange, right? We know the process of air exchange, right? From air to your nose or mouth, right? And then from there to larynx, and from larynx into the trachea first, and then the bronchi, right? Trachea, from trachea to bronchi, from bronchi to bronchioles, and there to alveoli, and from there the air gets into the blood, right? Into the RBCs, and then this blood goes into the organs, and from organs it goes into each cell, right? Each and every cell, right? Each cell. Now this is the gas exchange, right? Air exchange, all the way, and then it goes all the way back the same way, right? Goes to the organs, from the organs into the blood, from this to alveoli, then from alveoli into the bronchioles, from the bronchioles back up, right? So I'm making the same track back all the way, right? So when we talk about breathing, this is where the breathing ends, right? This is breathing, and now this part is called respiration, right? And what is respiration? It is the supply of or the gaseous exchange between the cells, each and every cell, and that gaseous exchange is the process in which energy is generated. So what is respiration, right? The process done by every cell in the body, right? Every cell in body to break down glucose or sugar, right? Anything that we have, any food, right? Into energy, right? So what is the reaction? So I'm going to write the reaction for this, that oxygen, right, which is supplied by the blood, plus glucose gets broken down into energy that is used by our body to perform its functions, and carbon dioxide, right, that we exhale. So this is the basic reaction. I'm going to write the symbol. So this is O2. Glucose can be written as C6H12O6, right? Energy, I'm just going to write it as E, right? And energy, we can just write it as energy. And then CO2, right? So this is the word equation. The word equation, and this is the symbolic, right? In the form of symbols, right? Chemical symbols. So this is a symbolic equation and this is a word equation. You can be asked to write either of the two, and whenever you're asked a theoretical question, then you're supposed to write both. That would be much better. Even if you don't know the formula of the glucose, you can write energy in glucose as is, but make sure that you write small little g's with the CO2 and O2, because over here O2 is also a gas and CO2 is also a gas, right? So make sure to write these symbols as well, right? Okay, so this is respiration, which is done by every cell. Now I'm going to draw an animal cell right over here. So let's just say this is the animal cell. I'm not going to write all the parts in this. I'm only going to draw the parts which are actually used by the cell to generate this energy. So these, as you can see, these zigzag parts, I'm going to call their name in a moment, but first let me just draw this. Now over here I'm just going to draw that O2 from the blood comes in, right? This is O2, and I'm going to reduce its size, right? And CO2 goes out, right? As of reaction, energy is created, right? Along with the energy, glucose, right? Or the sugar comes into the blood, right? So what is this part that we're trying to work with? I'm going to highlight it as yellow, right? What is this part, right? What is this part that is doing this respiration inside the cell, right? So this is the animal cell, right? Or the cells in our body, right? This is a representation of that. This is not the complete cell. I'm just drawing the cell membrane, right? And this part, right? This is the cell membrane, and this is called mitochondria, right? It's a part of the cell, right? It's a component inside the animal cell that does respiration. It does respiration, right? This is the component inside the cell that is responsible for respiration. It takes in the glucose and the O2 and gives out energy to the cell to do its function, as well as breathes out CO2. Now this is called respiration, right? Now I hope you are able to understand how respiration does work. Now over here I'm going to give another important information, that respiration generates energy, right? So this infers, or this gives us the information that respiration is an exothermic process, right? Now over here I'm going to break down this term exothermic, right? Exo means, I call it exit, right? And therm means temperature, right? Or what we call as I'm going to refer this instead as heat, right? So therm means heat, so I'm just going to call it the exit of heat, right? So that means exothermic reactions are those reactions that generate heat, right? So we can further infer that respiration generates heat, right? And that's the problem, that when we're not having enough food, we haven't taken much food, so it is like our body temperature is not well maintained, and we feel cold when we're not energized. Also, contrary to that, if we're having low oxygen, then also our body temperature reduces, because there's less oxygen to do respiration in every cell, so overall the body temperature also falls. So this is one important factor, that respiration is a exothermic process, and in this process heat is generated, right, which is this energy. It can be referred to as heat, but it is also the energy used by the cells to do its function, right. Finally, let's get into our final topic, which is blood. And this is going to be a short little topic, because I'm just going to give you a summary of how you can prepare this topic for any kind of questions or examination. So our blood, right, I'm going to divide blood into component, right. Component means part of the blood and its functions, right. So I'm just going to give you a little chart that you can work with, and it will help you memorize or work with it, right. Now in your book only three parts are considered. I will also tell you about the fourth part, which is, I think, an important part of your blood, right. It's a very critical component in the blood. So the most prominent thing in the blood is the RBCs, right. We call them as red blood cells, right, or the RBCs. What they do, their function is to carry oxygen to every cell, right. Now your blood is composed of RBCs, right, the white blood cells, the plasma, the liquid, right, that contains all of these, right, and the platelets. As you can see, these tiny little monster-like articles are the platelets. These are the gluey functioning component of the blood that helps in healing. The plasma is the carrier that carries all these components. Then the white blood cells are also there, which helps us fight, right. So I'm going to write about white blood cells. WBCs, right. So what the white blood cells do, they fight pathogens, and I did discuss pathogens in the class, that pathogens are microbes that attack our body and may cause us sickness or illness, right. Those are pathogens. They fight these pathogens, and there are many ways in which they fight. We'll discuss it in a moment, right. And then we have the plasma, right. So please don't mind the sparkly pen, because I need to make my selection later on, right. So plasma carries nutrients and CO2, right. And finally we have the platelets, which is not discussed in your book, but I'm going to discuss that, right. Platelets. So platelets, what the platelets do, these help in recovering from injury, right. Let's say if there is a cut or a laceration, then these platelets will immediately from your blood will collect around that laceration, and will try to join them together. These platelets bond with each other, and they simply close the wound. We usually see that when there is a wound, we see that blood stops after a while, and we see a hard shell forming on it, right. That is actually caused by these platelets to form, right, and they form a bridge and close that wound, so that further blood loss is not possible, right. So that's the the function related to all these components of the blood, right. Now we are going to discuss some important points in the in this unit, that what and how different parts of these things work. We now do understand, when we talk about when we talk about the RBCs, we understand they are red in color. And why they're red in color? Due to oxyhemoglobin, right. It's a chemical compound that appears to be red and is responsible for carrying oxygen, right? That is the very reason they are red, and they are small and heavy cells, right? They are small in size, but they're still heavy cells, uh, right? That's the second point. Third point, uh, they are smaller so that they can easily travel through blood vessels, right? And blood vessels are the veins that blood and the arteries, veins and the arteries that carry the blood, right? And the capillaries are the smaller ones that connect the arteries to the veins. So now over here, I will signify that the arteries are those blood vessels that take the oxygenated blood from the heart to the organs, and veins are those vessels which carry the deoxygenated blood from the organs back to the heart and into the lungs, right, for reoxygenation, right? So this is the function, the basic properties of the RBCs. Now we're going to talk about white blood cells, right, WBCs. Let's finalize there some points, right? They fight pathogens, right? Number two, one point I missed, right? Let me just before we get into the WBCs. The RBCs, and this is kind of an interesting information. RBCs don't have a nucleus, right? Even though it is a cell, but it does not have a nucleus. And why it does not have a nucleus? To allow more space for hemoglobin to be there for oxygen, right? So that more of the oxygen can be there. And another important fact, RBCs also don't have mitochondria. Even though these are living cells, they don't have mitochondria. Why? Because otherwise they will consume the oxygen that they're carrying. To prevent consumption of oxygen, right? If our red blood cells are going to contain mitochondria, right, that we studied in the process of respiration, the component of the cell that does generate oxygen, that does generate CO2 and consumes oxygen. So if RBCs are going to have mitochondria in them, then it is going to consume the energy as well as the oxygen that it is supposed to carry to the blood. So that is why red blood cells do not have nuclei to have more space for oxygen, and they don't have mitochondria so that they don't consume the oxygen that they're carrying, right? These are the important factors, the important points related to red blood cells. Now let's get into white blood cells, right? When we talk about white blood cells, they fight pathogens. Point number one. Number two, form antibodies, and these are the tiny little structures or gelatin structures, that the chemicals that they create to fight or different mechanisms for the white blood cells to fight different type of pathogens. When there are a large number of bacteria, then the white blood cells create these antibodies that are going to fight these pathogens. They entrap them, as a very good illustration available on page 35 of your book, right, of the book. So you can have a view over there how it actually works. And they also sometimes directly eat those pathogens. Sometimes they entrap them, sometimes they create antibodies. So there are many ways in which the white blood cells protect our body, right? And usually their job is to keep the body safe from any external microbes, right? Protect from microbe attack, right? So protects or fights microbes. And this is the same statement, just different wording for the same one, right? This is what pathogens means, right? Microbes are like bacteria, amoeba, other things. So many of these microbes or types of bacteria come in, and then finally we're going to discuss about plasma, right? So plasma, it's transparent liquid, right? That does carry all the information and everything, right? So when we talk about uh, when we talk about plasma, then we're talking about that it's transparent liquid, carries uh, nutrients from you know from glucose and all these nutrients to the cell, nutrients to each cell, right? It also carries away CO2 from cells to each cell, right? From cells, and then out for the breathe out process, right? So this is the whole a recap of all the topics that we have studied over the 3 weeks. One orientation week and the two contextual weeks. So I will be solving the related past paper questions as well, and I will share post a video for that soon enough. So meanwhile, just go through this collection of ideas, the things that we have discussed regarding human respiratory system, and let me know if you have any questions. You can simply post them as a comment or just text me on WhatsApp, so that I may be able to help you out in revising your topic for upcoming tests. Thank you.